All right, guys, thanks for being here. On this section today, I have Steve Giordano, who, if you don't know, you should know, and you definitely will after this. But Steve is the number one overall producer 2023, 2022, and 2021, or just those 2 years, Steve?
Yeah, three in a row.
Three in a row. And then is the number one overall producer in FFL history, which is super cool. Like, I like that one the best. 3 years is cool, but being the number one overall is pretty badass. So, dude, thankful to have you here. I've known you for a long time. What year did you start with Family First Life?
Full time 2019.
2019. Cool. Yeah. So that sounds about right. I've been in about a year. And then once you guys started, and it's cool to see how a lot of things have changed, dude, because, early on there, like my first full year in the business, 2018, I was like the number 4 overall life producer that year, I think. And I wrote $404,000. And like, I don't even think you'd be top 104 now with that number, which is really cool. Right. And it's because of people like you and a lot of the awesome people on our team that have done to really stretch what people can do. But I'd love if you can kind of go through, what it was like for you coming in, because you picked it up not right away, right? But pretty much right away, you started selling at a high clip. So if you can kind of go through some of the mindset stuff that helped you sell right away, and most specifically the mindset as far as designing a good lead plan, spending enough on leads, but spending enough on the right leads. Kind of go through what your overall strategy was to come on and have a good start right away. I think I appreciate it. We'll bounce back and forth, dude.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Number one, I think for me, I've always tried to keep this pretty simple because, and I think it helps new agents too, because there can be a lot of stuff that's thrown at them. And I think particularly now and what's kind of gone on where now we have like IUL leads, which we didn't have like when me and you started, and you have all these different things that you can kind of go after. So I've always tried to keep it crazy simple. When I started early on, it was Facebook final expense, mixed in a little bit of mortgage, mixed in a little bit of older CRM and second chance. And I just always thought, okay, if I could spend in the beginning, I think probably my first month, it was like, the typical 1,000 a week. The first part of that was believing in like what they were telling me, right? So like anybody who's on this call, like we're not just telling you those numbers just like because we pulled them out of the air. Those are what the numbers that traditionally work. So I think when you're starting out, if you can keep it simple and say, okay, I'm going to commit to if it's 1,000 or 1,500, and then I'm legit going to go to work behind that. Like the cheat code is working the weekends, particularly in the beginning. But if you're going, hey, I'm spending 1,000 to 1,500, and you're legit dialing 2 days and running 4, or if you're doing virtual, however you're doing it, if you can do that and commit to that, like even if you have some bumps in the road, which you will, you're gonna find some successes just from the sheer fact that you're just doing it day in and day out and day in and day out. I find a lot of times, like if we really broke it down and we're honest with ourselves, there's more people, or most people are quote unquote kind of part-time based on the leads they buy or the limited amount of leads they buy and the limited amount of time that they're actually working. You have to like commit. And that's early on. Like I was like, okay, this is my job here. Like I'm going to spend this money and I'm going to go to work behind it. And I'm going to work even harder because I understood in the beginning I wasn't very good. You know what I mean? Like I've heard you do trainings talking about, hey, I wrote X amount, but you would run like double the amount of appointments because you were getting over the learning curve. I was the same way.
Yeah.
Like we're figuring it out, and it took more time. So if I'm new and I'm on here committing to those amounts of leads, let's say 1,000 to 1,500 consistently week in and week out, and then legitimately like dialing the phone and running a specific schedule, 2 days dialing, 4 days running, whatever it is, and just doing that over and over and over, no matter if it's good or bad, that's the outcome. If you could just focus on the activity and not the outcome will come.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this like just before we got on here about, what'd you do the weekend, watch the football, whatever. And I'm like, dude, but for the first 6 years I was doing this business, probably the first 5 legitimately, like every time I was in the field every Saturday, every Sunday. Right. And I think eventually you will earn some balance back, but I didn't expect that in the beginning. Right. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, okay, like I work for myself now, and they they take it the wrong direction. They're like, I work for myself now, so I only have to work this many hours. Whereas I think you, and I know for sure me, we're like, oh, we work for ourselves now. Like we can really max this thing out and work 7 days a week to try to get ahead, right? And I think that's how people should view it, right? You can do whatever you want with your life, but like if you're really trying to get ahead, you should look at it like, oh, I can work as many hours a week as I want, and there's no cap on my income. Not, I only have to work 10 hours this week, and no one's going to fire me. It's like you should fire yourself if you only work 10 hours, right?
Right.
What does the mindset look like for you as far as you mentioned kind of your leads. You're like, I'm going to get this many leads. Like, what did a successful week of work look like for you? Like, how many? Are you still in the field now, or are you doing virtual, or kind of both?
I'm in the field pretty much 80%. I do
Okay.
probably 20%. Like I'll do, like today I'm home, I'm dialing call transfer, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But for the most part, like I'm a meet you type of a guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know myself and I know that I'm more successful that way. But I sprinkle in kind of call transfers a little bit.
So what does a successful field week look like for you as a producer, right? Like how many appointments you trying to book, how many you trying to set or sit down with, and then how many you trying to close from those? What is your
I've
standard?
always I've always been the 30 guy. Mark Mead, he
Mhm.
preached that early on. So my goal is, hey, if I can give myself 15 and 15, I'm in the field. I know the reality is I'm probably going to book 30. I'm probably going to sit 18. And then I mean, at this point, I'm probably going to sell, let's say maybe 12 or 11 of those. Maybe
Mhm.
earlier on it was maybe half. But if you just legit started and you were like playing those numbers and you were like, okay, how can I work so hard no matter what I got to do to get me 30 appointments or get in front of that many people? And let's say I wasn't good on the phone. I still do this. I was in the field on Saturday and I had an opening and I went and I door knocked somebody and I booked it for Wednesday. Like if you
Yeah.
could just do that over and over and over and over, like you're going to find success if you work hard. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
this is the type of business that's going to reward the person that goes above and beyond. So I've always just had that mentality, like, let me go above and beyond. And I've also, living in Florida, I feel like down here, like most people don't really work that hard. Like they kind of got
Yeah.
like the sun has fried their brain and they need to go to the beach. I'm like, let me just outwork all those people because they're going to go and be chilling at the beach on Saturday and I'm going to go and work and make a lot of money. And then I can, own the beach one day. That's
Right.
always kind of been my thought process.
Right. Well, and you're saying like you have 30 appointments booked a week. You only sit with 18 of those and you only close 11 of those. So most people looked at it, or you close 12 of them, let's say. Most people look at it and they go, "Oh, like if I only sold one out of every three appointments booked, that's not very good, right?" But you're the number one producer of all time, and usually, like I sell 30% of the appointments I booked, roughly 33% of the appointments I booked, right? And so no matter, and you just do it at a higher scale than most people, right? And you've done it for longer, more consistent than most people, which is why it's turned out the way it's turned out. Because I think a lot of people look for that silver bullet. Like, how do I close 75, 80, 90%? It's like, dude, just go see a lot of people and you're going to stumble into some apps. And it's, there's been a lot of people who have said that, but I've never heard you say that before. Cause I just, we never talked like this on a one-on-one call, but I've never heard you say like, I only sell 12 out of 30. It's like, well, that doesn't sound very good to the outside, but it's good enough to be the number one producer of all time. Right. So it is actually pretty good. Um, Now, once you get in the home, and I think the same exact thing, we have a lot of people do telesales now. I think most of our group, but the same things apply. The same principles of sales apply from in-home versus telesales. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because you're definitely better at selling than me. But I think the first 5 minutes, let's call it, of the appointment is definitely the most important part, where you're kind of establishing who's in control, what it's going to look like, and how the appointment's going to go. Would you agree with that?
100%.
So what can you give everyone kind of what yours looks like in the beginning, like how you set the table properly, how you make sure you're the one in the control of the appointment, and then, how you set up what's going to happen for the rest of the appointment, whether it's in the home or over the phone.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like, I'm so to the point of like little things mattering. Like, I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example. When a lot of times you go to a door, and let's say the client like kind of forgot the appointment or whatever, they're not welcoming to you for whatever the reason, right? It's how you kind of conduct yourself as to like you should be there. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
like this weekend, I had a few of them where they're like looking at me weird, like why are you here again, kind of a thing. And I'm just standing like straight up, acting like I'm supposed to be there, and like kind of saying, "Hey, yeah, I'm here for the mortgage insurance. Where can we sit?" Like not like I'm not timid about it. So I think if you're new, you got to kind of get over some of those little things to then set the table, because that little thing right there, getting you in the door, now they know that you mean business, you're there for business, and then you can kind of take that throughout the rest of the appointment. So I often think about that when people look at you a little weird when you're at the door if they forgot. So now,
Mhm.
you get in. I'm big on, like, I'm not Mr. like rapport for 3 hours, but I'm like rapport from the door kind of a guy, where I just start rapid firing questions to you around, typically, how long have you lived there? What do you do for work? Stuff that's going to help me connect with you, but it's also some things that I'm going to be able to use throughout the appointment. So I'm softening them up in a little bit, sit down, financial inventory, obviously. And basically the first thing I'm doing is I'm telling people kind of what we're going to do, why we're going to do it. And I'm also
Mhm.
doing that in a simple way, because new agents need to understand the psychology of the middle American client that we meet, and where you can't go over their head. You know what I mean? Like, you got to keep
Right.
it stupid simple, so they understand, okay, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's what the process is going to look like. So I'm typically, business card, I'm a broker. I like to say little things that build credibility. Like, I do every type of insurance. I do mortgage. I do Medicare. I do whatever. I do annuities, what have you. So now, as you're saying these things, and it's the way you say it, you've built credibility in yourself. And I don't care
Mhm.
if you've never sold anything, but you're telling them, like, I do all of these things. So they're like, oh wow, that's really cool. Like, you sound kind of like you know what you're doing, and you're kind of important. And then here's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through your health. We're going to go through your budget. We're going to find a plan that's going to fit your needs and fit your budget. And we're going to apply with a carrier and make sure they're going to cover you. Does that sound fair? And then
Mhm.
I'm legit like right into it in the way of questions. Like, I think sometimes new agents are afraid to ask questions in appointments, because
Yeah.
they think, like, if they ask health or finance, like, and they don't ask permission first, that a person's going to be turned off by it. But it's actually the opposite. If you act like you're there for the reason that you're there for, and you start asking those questions, they're like, well, yeah, that's why he's here. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to make it weird. Like, don't make it
Right.
awkward. So
Yeah, that'd
that's
be it's
typically
like going to the doctor's office, right? It's like if
right.
you went to the doctor's office, you would not be surprised if they started asking about your health and this, that, and the third, right? But if they were in there and then they were like, "Hey, I probably should ask you some questions that are kind of personal and like about," you'd be like, "Why are you acting so weird about this? You're supposed to ask about my health. You're a doctor, right?" So if you're getting someone insurance and you're asking about their health, like that's pretty normal, right? So I think, like you said, dude, that was my biggest struggle in the beginning, was just acting like I was supposed to be there, right? Like acting like I should be there and I was the one that's supposed to be in control, because I was very timid when I was new. And then once I learned just to literally basically tell people what to do in question form, that was the game changer for me. It's like, Steve, I assume we're here because you want to make sure if you die, your family's not in a bad position. Question mark, right? And you go,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
exactly.
So as long as you can just figure out how to, statements with question mark at the end, that's really all sales is, I think. And if you do it assertively enough, like you said, you're like, I'm not trying to, force 18 out of 18 people I sit with to buy, but if I can get 12 out of 18 to buy, those are the ones that'll keep book on the business on the books anyways, right?
Correct. Exactly. The
What
other
are a
key
couple?
thing
Go
too,
ahead.
in
Yeah.
in the hard work end of it, is like, you gotta, if you're booking these appointments, you gotta like find your way into the house, like, by any means necessary. Like, I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example. I had an appointment on Saturday that was a reschedule, and she lives in a building, and I'm trying to get into the building. I can't get into the door. I called her 6 times. I text her, answer the phone. She finally answers the phone. She lets me in. She lets me up. This building looked like, who did it and ran. And I go in and I sit with her and I get her a mortgage plan. And then her daughter walks in and I ask her if she has a retirement, and I write her daughter an IUL. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I literally almost left because I was getting frustrated about getting in. And then I'm like, no, I'm getting in.
Yeah.
I'm gonna exhaust it until I can't exhaust it. And that's where writing a lot of insurance like stems from. Like, writing the insurance isn't hard. We got to get in front of enough people.
Yeah, and to your point, like once you become too like it'd be easy for you to go, I've sold a lot of insurance. Like, I don't need to do that. Like, don't they know who I am? I'm Steve, right?
Yeah, he's right.
But you're like, no, like this is my job, is to help these people out and to provide for my family. So I'm not just going to give up and not just going to go home if it's inconvenient, right? Like last week, I left on Sunday and I got back on a week later on Sunday.
Wow.
And like, I think there's a little part of you that tells you like, do you really have to do all this? Like, you probably don't have to. But I think the people that get ahead and stay ahead, that do what Steve have done, have gone like, no, like it's Saturday, I'm going to go to work. I always go to work, right? Or I'm like, am I going to be gone for a week and away from, I have a baby that I love hanging out with and my wife's working and all this crazy stuff's going on. Like, if you get too good to do the small thing, to do the little things like travel and, see clients at inconvenient times, then you'll never get to enjoy the fun things in life, right? And never get to get so far ahead. So I appreciate your mindset, dude, where it's like, nope, like the job needs done. It's not finished yet. And you're still out there leading by example every single day, right? Last thing I want to ask you is, for the people on here who are building, a lot of people have asked me, and I'm sure people have asked you this too, like, how do you get your team to sell more, right? How much of a difference have you noticed it makes when you talk to someone about sales, like the way they listen versus the way you see them to respond to other people who don't sell a lot and how they listen? Because I know if you tell me, if I was a brand new agent, all the stuff you just said, I'd be like, hell yeah, I'm definitely doing that because Steve said to do it and he sells a lot. But I know you've also seen where like sometimes people give advice and the agent looks at them sideways, like, I don't think you sell anything. I'm not taking that advice. So for the managers, from your perspective, like how much has it helped you with your agents because you sell at such a high level?
Yeah, it's huge because it builds the credibility. There's never an agent that's going to come to me and be like, "Oh my God, you'll never guess what I just dealt with." Well, yeah, I probably dealt with it 27 times last week, by the
Yeah.
way. So I think it's huge credibility. And look, at the end of the day, you want to work with people that are in the trenches with you. Like nobody's ever
Mhm.
going to take away from you what you sold and all the Hall of Fames you made. Like nobody's ever going to take that away. And there's
Yeah.
no agent that's ever going to be able to come to you and be like, hey, like you wouldn't do these things like when you're traveling when you don't have to travel. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I think if you're a manager, that's huge because let's face facts. Like we should all be in the field in some way, shape, or form, or selling in some way, shape, or form, because it shows other people how to do it and that we're doing it with them and that we're not above anything. And I never
Yeah.
lose sight of what got me here. Like I know the work ethic it took to get here. So I'm not going to all of a sudden be like, hey, let me go slack off. And that's huge when you're building because other people look at it and they're like, all right, well, he's here with me. He's not just telling me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No one likes getting orders barked at them from an ivory tower, right? And like you said, whenever we release a new type of lead or want to try something different, like I'm the first one, jump in the field and try it out and see if it works. And you're the same guy, which is why I appreciate and respect you so much as a business partner, man. So hey, I appreciate you getting on, guys. Hopefully you all took some notes and can watch this back. Everything Steve said, definitely do it because you'll sell a lot of insurance if you do it. So appreciate you, my man.
Thanks, boss. Appreciate it.